report, item 16. So we've got Umana San Pedro, who is going to give us a presentation on the smart meter smart meters. He's going to give us a PowerPoint presentation.
So yes, Umana's going to give you an update on the smart water network. So smart meters are a small part of this, but this is about the smarts across the network as a whole.
Great.
Excellent, Umana's coming up.
And then Helen will give us an update on the wastewater treatment plant fire, and then we'll go into your report.
Into the report as a whole.
As a whole. Right. There's 3 stages to this. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Right. Smart water network. I think that this is an exciting project and hope you enjoy the presentation. The first slide that we have here is to give a little bit of context, and it's very good, this presentation just coming after Michelle one, because she refreshed all the objectives of our integrated strategy, and this project is it. It was one of the identified projects to meet those 3 objectives that we have in there. Specifically for the smart water project, our objectives are improve water safety. We want to ensure and demonstrate that our water is safe. Improve asset management. We want to increase asset life and have a better information for asset management and planning. Improve operational management. That information will allow, the information that we are gathering is going to allow us to manage our network better. Improve sustainability by reducing demand, reduce leakage, understand better what is the consumption of our customers, and respond to climate change. And value there's a very important one. Make the people value our water. This slide is a busy slide, and I'm saying from here this is a little bit hard to read, but basically it's explaining the work packages that we have put together to actually being able to meet those objectives. And I'm going to go in a little bit of detail. Package A is our monitoring system, and the product that we use is Aqua Advanced Water Network, Suez product that has been used in different water entities in Europe. Is really a dashboard where all the data that we are gathering from different sensors, different communication platforms, different softwares is centralized in this dashboard, and it allows us to analyze trends, to plan a response for the events that those sensors are indicating that are happening in the network. We have package B, water quality monitoring, and we are installing a scan nano station. Actually, we installed that last week at Keys Pump Station. We are monitoring continuously pH, turbidity, conductivity, temperature, oxidation reduction potential, and dissolved for organic carbon. And our purpose with this is to be able to reduce the time to detect contamination on our network. Package C, which is transients and acoustic loggers. The transients they measure spike in pressure. It's a high frequency monitoring of pressure. By monitoring those spikes, we are going to be able to operate the network differently. We are going to be able to reduce the transients, increase the asset of our pipes, because pipes don't like those spikes at all. And also it serves us as a critical control point, because by maintaining that positive pressure is how we are ensuring or minimizing the risk of contamination. We are installing 200 acoustic sensors. Those sensors will be continuously listening for water escaping from the pipes, and so that means that accurately we can detect where leakage is. We can reduce water demand, of course, and again we can ensure that positive pressure and minimize the risk of contamination. Package C is smart water meters, which as Helen said, many people, when we talk about smart water, they think about the smart water meters, but it's only one component that helps us to meet our objectives. So we are installing in this pilot roughly 1,500 smart water meters. And we will get hourly consumption information, water use. That allow us to calculate water balance, and those meters, they have also a reverse leak alarm, reverse flow alarm, and leak alarm. So if a property has a leak, it's continuously leaking, we are receiving an alarm, and we can notify the residents. And finally, package E, 8 bulk flow meters and pressure. So continuously we are measuring pressure and flow, so that we can do the water balance calculation, and also we can form DMAs, district meter areas, which brings me to the next slide that explain the concept of water balance and district meter areas. We took the picture from our public website. I think that is a good overview of main components of our water supply, with our aquifers, well, pumping stations, reservoir pumping stations, and I don't know if you can see it there. No, when you see the black arrow in there, so it means that with those bulk flow meters, we will be able to accurately measure what is the flow getting into the system, and then with our residential water meters, we will see the consumption. So if you follow the simple water balance equation, the leakage that we have in our public network is the difference between the flow measured by those bulk flow meters. So that concept, the cluster of houses within an area where we accurately can measure water in and out, is what we define as a district meter area. And I'm insisting in the concept because we mentioned that quite a bit when we talk about smart water. This is our scope, Graffiti water supply zone. The left image is just so the area of the zone, and the right one, the stars, are representing those backflow meters. And because we have installed those backflow meters, we have been able to divide the area in 3 DMAs. And the smart water meters are going only into that north DMA, which is where the arrow shows. May wonder why graffiti. I mean, different reasons in there. Graffiti was the area where we started our pressure management, and by reducing pressure with the valves create transients, so that is an issue. So because we are monitoring transients, we are able to monitor that area better. Graffiti is a very sandy area as well, so we are unable to identify when a leak. It's all drained by the sun. We had a water quality issue at Keys Pumping Station, and installing this water quality monitoring instrument was one of the action plan. So yeah, different reasons in there. And the main one is because we needed to choose a zone where we were able to test all this technology and prove that the installation on all these sensors are giving us the value that we expect, and actually we can meet our objectives. These are some examples of some sensors that we have installed so far. We have a transient sensor on the right top. Is a transient sensor installed in a hydrant. Then we have one example of the smart meters installed in 75 Travis Country Drive. And the left picture is showing the control panel for the flow meter, a pressure transducer for those bulk flow meters. So yeah, those are some examples. As I mentioned, we have already installed as well the scan at Keys Pumping Station. We are already monitoring all those water quality parameters. And this is how our platform looks like. It's basically what I mentioned at the beginning. The right-hand side, you can see the 3D MAs there, your spatial capability, and then all sort of graphs where we can identify those events and analyze trends, and all the data coming. It's quite complex. I mean, all the data coming from different packages, different communications. We really needed something where we could do the analysis in a unique platform. And this is our implementation plan. The EOI and RFP started in September 2019. In March 2021, we started the pilot in graffiti. This project at the moment is funded by the VIA Stimulus Fund. So that's why we have the March target there to spend the funds. After that, we have an observation period plan, analyze, especially the data that we are collecting are providing what we want. I mean, are helping us to meet those objectives. And then we have already budget allocated in the next few years for a citywide rollout. I take any questions.
So just we're doing the pressure trials in Rafiti as well.
Yeah.
So is that one reason why we're doing this trial as well, or?
Well, one of the reasons why this water supply zone was selected is actually to being able to monitor the
effect.
Yes, exactly. And we have already started to talk about how the citywide rollout is going to look like and what is going to be our next zone. And one of the criteria that we may follow is follow the rezoning project. That may be, yeah.
Great. Well, it's quite exciting, actually, I think. Sam?
Yeah, that was a really good presentation. Thank you very much. One of them talked about, is it the acoustic sound?
Yeah.
So can you just explain what that, how do you pick up, how does that work?
Well, it's just it's as simple as the device actually only record a sound at 2 a.m. every day. So it's not continuing recording sound. Right. It just pick a sound at 2 a.m. and then there is a software on artificial intelligence that analyze the sound and detect that sound is coming for a leak. Basically, the reality is that sometimes the sensor pick false leaks. So when a sensor identify a leak, then we have a company that goes there and look for the leak, and sometimes, but yeah, basically it's just record a sound file, and the sound file is analyzed.
And just so that's really useful. So is that happening anywhere else in New Zealand? Like, is it common practice that?
We ran a pilot 3 years ago. I think
Vicente.
Watercare, yes, and I think Watercare have also looked at using acoustic monitors.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, that's good. It's just, and probably the only other one is, how do we communicate more of this to the public? Because I think it would further add confidence. Obviously, it's a pilot, but it would further add confidence, I guess, to the work you're doing in infrastructure. Because I don't know about everyone else, but I found that really interesting. And in snapshots, talking about how we identify issues within the infrastructure with technology is a really, really good thing. So it doesn't need an answer now, but it'd be cool to have a think about how we communicate that further.
Yeah, yeah, and we're keen to do that. I mean, the pilot, some aspects of the pilot are only just in place.
Yep.
So we've only had the water quality monitoring, for example, in place for 3 weeks.
Yeah, yeah.
So it'll take some time
quite
for us
early
to
days.
get some results through.
Yeah, completely. It would just, when we can communicate, that would be really useful.
Yeah,
Certainly.
definitely.
There was, I'll just, am I allowed to?
You are.
There was publicity at the time, when this was initiated, and it was made public about Rafiti. And I've got a friend who lives out there, so I won't explain what happened next. But there are a lot of people who just had questions about, well, why us?
Oh, right.
Yeah. And so and then there were other people who had questions like, why not us?
Yeah.
So, but Sarah was just saying it would be a good idea to do a little video with an explanation of what we're trying to do. And I was just trying to find the actual phrase from the chlorination presentation that I do from time to time, which I stole off you, Helen. But it's change precedes.
Change precedes contamination.
Yeah.
So yes, so
that's
being
why
able to monitor
you do
water
the
quality.
acoustic monitoring.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's just fascinating technology that I think
Yeah.
we should
Isn't
share
it?
with as many people as possible. So,
Yeah.
Cutting edge.
yeah.
But it's the idea that if you're going to get a contaminant, there's always something that happens first.
Yeah.
And so if you put all the measures in place that pick up the things that can happen, then that's what increases your ability to...
Yes, positive
the
pressure
preventer.
substances. Yeah.
These are all barriers, aren't they?
Anyway, sorry, but it would be great if you can just look at
No,
that in
don't
time.
be sorry. That was really,
Certainly.
really good questions. Yanni.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for the update. I guess just the concern that we're only doing it in a low pressure zone, and so I just wondered if we had another small zone that had high pressure that we could do it in, so we could see the difference.
So Rafiti is not a low pressure zone. There are lower pressure zones across the city. So it's probably one of our medium pressure zones, to
Is
be
it
honest.
one that we changed?
It's one that we have dropped the pressures, yes.
Right,
So I think they've dropped from about 70 to about 55 metres.
Oh, okay.
But the north zone, I think, sits at about 40 metres.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, so it's one of the middling.
What about
pressure
a
zones.
high pressure zone? Like, I'm just interested in whether that would be any advantage to looking at a higher pressure zone.
So I think that's the thing Umana touched on. What we will do is roll this out as we roll out our rezoning and pressure management project.
That's great.
Yeah, but sorry, just in terms of the trial, like if the benefits are a certain level in a certain pressure zone, they may not be as good in a higher pressure zone, or they might be better. How would you know?
They will be good across all zones. So getting better operational management, getting better information on the location and the size of leaks, and getting better information on the water balance will be good in all of our zones. So we will eventually roll it across the whole of the city.
Which comes back to my previous question: is if we're going to do it across the city, why don't we just do it now? Why do we need to do the trial, given that we're replacing a lot of meters now and spending that cost?
Because we need to try the technology, right?
Yeah.
I mean, think about, we haven't got into much detail, but residential meters, for example, that we are using, they told to the street lights, right? And we need to convert the street lights to 24/7 power. And then we need to check that the meter communicates. So until we are not confident with the selected technology is the right one and is giving the outputs expected, we cannot really roll out anywhere else.
No, I think it's sensible to do a trial first, and I fully support you in that.
We did do a bit of research on how this has been done overseas, and all of the evaluations say start with a trial
Sensible.
and then step it out across your city rather than sort of go everywhere all at once.
I think so.
Yeah. Okay.
And then you can find the most effective and efficient way to roll out the technology and iron out any issues at a small scale.
So that was a really, really good presentation. Thank you so much. Helen,
Thank
could
you.
I invite you to start the wastewater treatment plant
Certainly.
recovery? Thanks, Umana.
Thank you.
All right, thanks very much. So the wastewater treatment plant fire, of course, was after we completed our report on Three Waters, so it isn't covered in our usual update. So what I wanted to do here was just to give you a quick overview of changes to operations out at our wastewater treatment plant to recover the effectiveness of the wastewater treatment. And here our aim is to make sure that we comply with the relevant resource consents. So that is primarily the discharge consent for the quality of the effluent that goes out the ocean outfall, and also the consent for odours generated from the treatment plant, because those are where we have the two biggest challenges. So today I'm not going to touch on the fire investigation work that is continuing, nor am I going to touch on insurance matters, which are of course going on in the background, and nor will I cover the damage assessment work. Okay, so what I really want to focus on here is the recovery work and the interim operation.
Thanks, Helen. That's clear.
Okay. So anyone who was in town, of course, on the 1st of November would probably have noticed the fire, either the enormous amount of black smoke in the sky or the smell of it that indeed even came into this building as it rose over the city and then sort of settled across the western parts. It was one of the biggest fires in the city for a number of years and did cause a lot of damage out at the plant. So it started on the roof of one of our trickling filters, and then as that roof collapsed, it jumped across to the roof of the second trickling filter and continued to burn on that one. In terms of the treatment plant itself, this is one of the graphics. It's a simplified graphic of what happens out at the treatment plant, and it's up on our website. And the normal process in terms of the wastewater arriving at the plant, so it comes in on the left-hand side from the reticulation and the pump stations. First of all is the screening, so simply takes out rags and rubbish. And then it goes through to grit removal, so we're taking out sand and silt, which we don't want to go through our processes. And then we have those primary sedimentation tanks that you can see right in the centre of that graphic. Now those remove about 70% of the suspended solids, so they take out a lot of the suspended solids, and about 30% of what is measured by biological oxygen demand. So that's the organic matter that's basically carbon that's in the incoming sewage. The sludge from that process, so the sludge from the bottom of those sedimentation tanks, goes across to the digesters, and the digesters are what generate the biogas and power at the plant. So those parts of the process are not affected. It's the next part, which is the trickling filters. And the trickling filters are the heart of the plant, if you like, in terms of treating the organic matter. So while we take out 30% of that biological oxygen demand in the sedimentation tanks, we take out about 60% of it in the trickling filters under usual operation. Okay, so that's the bulk of the biological treatment happens in those trickling filters. Massive structures, and really obvious in any aerial photos of the city with their bright white roofs. So 8 metres high, 55 metres across, 2 structures. Following the trickling filters, we go on to the solids contact tanks. So they're labelled up there as aeration tanks. And there's a little bit of removal of biological oxygen demand there. So we take out about 7% there. So a relatively small amount. And what we're doing there is we're flocculating the solids, so making the solid material clump together so that when it goes into the clarifiers, the solids drop to the bottom and the clear liquid comes off the top. Now, in the normal course of events, from the clarifiers, the solids make their way back across to the digesters and join the primary sludge, and the clear liquid comes off the top and goes on to the oxidation ponds. So that's the normal process. So what's changed? We've done a brief overview post-fire. So without the trickling filters, essentially what happens is we've got that enormous biological oxygen demand load that is now going through the clarifiers and into the ponds. So we're putting 5 to 10 times as much of a load onto those oxidation ponds, and that's what's caused a lot of problems in terms of odours. Okay, so those ponds are not coping. So there's a number of things that we've done immediately. So right at the beginning of the process, there's some polymer dosing going into those sedimentation tanks, and that's to increase the amount of solids removal and try and remove some of that biological oxygen demand. It does a little bit, so it has a small positive effect, but not a huge effect. But it's worth doing, and that was put in place almost immediately. The second thing, we're already also doing polymer dosing prior to the clarifiers, and again, that's to try and reduce that load on the ponds. The second thing we've done is add oxygen to the ponds themselves. So there's chemical dosing shown at the bottom of the picture just above the ponds, and what we're doing there is adding hydrogen peroxide, which breaks down to oxygen and water, to increase the amount of oxygen going into those ponds, try and prevent them from going anaerobic, because anaerobic ponds smell really bad. Okay, so that's the point of that. We're also wanting to introduce mechanical aerators into those, into Pond 1, so we'll come back to that. Now, the reason that I'm talking to you today about all of this is that my engineers are all away at a workshop looking at all of the options to further improve what we're doing here. One of the other things you might notice is that while the primary sludge, so from the sedimentation tanks, is going to the digesters, we are bypassing the digesters with the sludge from the clarifiers at the moment. And the reason for that is that the biological material that was suspended into the trickling filters and sitting in those secondary contact tanks has essentially died. So the biological process is not performing as well as it should. And if we send sludge from the clarifiers into the digesters, we're getting very high levels of hydrogen sulfide. So we're bypassing the digesters at the moment. And there's more material going directly to Cape Valley. We hope to resolve that within a few weeks. So just a little bit of a list of the work that's been done, and I'm sorry we didn't get the completion dates in there, but that polymer to assist the removal of solids, that was done within the first week of the fire, so that came on straight away, and then just a couple of weeks after that we added the polymer into the clarifiers. The hydrogen peroxide, that went in I think about week 3, and then the bypass work, we've got a temporary bypass in place at the moment, and we're working on getting a more permanent situation in there. We're also working on better odour control, so the where we do the screening and the grit removal, that area of the plant, the odour control was linked to the trickling filter aerator, so that failed after that, but we've got some odour control and some air extraction in place over that part of the process to reduce the odours from there. We were misting across the top of the trickling filters, however we've stopped that just last week, so there is much less odour coming from those trickling filters now. We're putting in some aerators into the oxidation pond, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. There's that ongoing optimisation of the secondary treatment processes that is continuing, and new sludge pipes going in. So we'll just keep working on that, and then the biosolids, yeah. So the biosolids, the primary biosolids, are still going to the main contractors, so they're used for making compost and applying to land. So in terms of the aerators, some of you might remember aerators from years gone by when oxidation ponds were really the primary tool in treating sewage. And so we've managed to source 3 aerators. One of them is in Pond 1 already, and the other 2 need a little bit of work to make them perform properly for us. And we're looking at ordering another 6 aerators, subject to the outputs of the workshop today, just to confirm that that's the right approach in the oxidation ponds. But that will assist in 2 things. First of all, it'll increase the oxygen going into those ponds and stop them going anaerobic, and it'll also improve the circulation of wastewater in those ponds, so that we don't get any dead spots in those ponds. So to the trends in wastewater quality, that's a very hard graph to read. Okay, so but essentially what you're seeing is those are the results along the bottom and those dots, and what you're looking at is the last 6 months there for the organic load as measured by biological oxygen demand over 5 days. So it's a 5-day test It takes a wee while to get the results. And you can see the results running along the bottom there and then starting to see a slight increase. They're all well within the consented value, which is the dotted line across there at 20 grams per cubic metre. For suspended solids, you'll see there's been quite an increase in suspended solids. So this is measured for the effluent coming out of the ponds, so after they've completed their way through the ponds. But again, it's still within our consented value. So we're keeping a close eye on these trends as we make any changes in the plant. It's worth remembering that wastewater coming into the plant from the primary pump stations to wastewater going out the ocean outfall takes about 20 days. So it's quite a long process, and a lot of that is because of the residence time in the ponds. So we've got about I think it's 200 hectares of ponds out there. So there's a lot of volume there.
Showing us the quality of the water going out the ocean outfall.
Well, it's showing you the quality of the water exiting the ponds. So yes, essentially what's going out the outfall.
Thanks.
And finally, the trends in the bacteria. And here we've seen quite a dramatic increase in the levels of bacteria going out, and then those are starting to come back down, which we're quite pleased about. Now, the consenting on this is a little more complex. So you'll see that we've got a standard consent value of 1,000 fecal coliforms per 100 mils, and then what's called a high value of 5,000 fecal coliforms per 100 mils. And the way the consent works is that we monitor this once a week, and then we look at compliance over an 8-week block. And we don't want any more than 2 values over the high value, and we don't want any more than 6 values over the standard value within any 8-week block. So at the moment we comply, and we're looking to bring the trends back down under that standard value, which is really our target. So next steps, we talked about optimising that secondary treatment process, and those following 3 bullet points are all about that. So we're looking at potentially covering some of the secondary treatment process to control the odours, since that secondary treatment process is now getting a higher load and generating more odours than it would under normal operation. We're also looking at installing some aerators into the clarifiers, so actually turning the clarifiers, instead of just separating out of the solids, getting those clarifiers to act as secondary treatment. And we're also looking at the ponds and possibly changing the flow path through the series of those 6 ponds to get better results out of the ponds. We are continuing to acquire aerators for those ponds, and those are particularly going in Pond 1. And ultimately what we want to do is regain that resilience that we had previously in the treatment plant, and be able to cope with any unforeseen events, such as breakdowns or increased loads on the plant. And then, of course, in the longer term, we will establish some workshops to look at the options for replacing that secondary treatment process, whether that's trickling filters or some alternative technology. So there'll be a lot more work in that space. So I'm happy to take any questions.
So Helen, when you're talking about adding more aerators and changing the flow of the liquid in the ponds are also a little bit more contaminated than they were, is there a health risk for people working in there, or do they have to get in?
No, the health risks are no different to the health risks that have always been at the wastewater treatment plant, and so our staff take the necessary precautions, have had the necessary vaccinations for working with wastewater,
right?
And that will continue.
So it's all doable. Sam?
Yeah, thanks, Helen. David, would you be able to go back, if it's okay, to the, and it's probably a question, I don't know if you can answer it, Helen, but I'm going to ask it anyway because it's probably a bit stupid, but stop there.
Suspended solids? Yep.
Yeah. So I guess you're talking about the trend going up. Do you kind of know if that trend will continue, or do you get to a point where it caps out?
We're hoping that won't continue to go up, but to some extent it depends what happens in the ponds.
Right.
So some of it may be due to, well, all of it's due to the higher load on the ponds at the moment, But we're also keeping an eye on those ponds as we go into the summer to make sure we don't get increased algae in the ponds, which would then add to the suspended solids load. So we're, when you change one thing, 2 or 3 other things also change. That's what we're keeping an eye on at the moment, and we're taking quite an agile, sort of adaptive approach, and we're monitoring a number of other parameters at the treatment plant as well, which are even more responsive to the changes.
Right.
So,
okay.
yeah.
So you're kind of, but we're not sure yet in terms of
That's correct. Yeah.
And just the only other one. Sorry, David, if you can go forward. I think it was one. Yeah, that one there. So when you said before about 2 being over the 5,000, 6 being over the 1,000, is that?
That's correct.
Is that correct?
6.
Is that
That's the each week. The samples each week. Yeah.
So looking at that, we're not far off.
Those are fine. So what we've shown you there are all of the results that we've got, not just the compliance results. So at the moment we're still within the compliance with our consent.
Right. Okay.
And the results have come back down, so we're reasonably confident.
It's come back down at the end.
Yes.
There. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. No. Cool. Thank you.
Good questions. Yanni? Oh, sorry, no, it was Aaron first then, Yanni. Sorry, Aaron.
Just so the smell, Helen.
Yes.
How long's that going to be around for? I was at Dyers Road on the weekend, and it was reminiscent of my childhood.
I know, it's funny that, isn't it?
Isn't it? You just go down there and go, hang on. Yeah. Oh,
That's
so you did there?
yes, and that's exactly what it is. It's reminiscent of how the treatment plant was prior to those trickling filters going in. So they went in the 70s, and the roofs went on them in the 80s.
Oh, hang on. Oh, 80s, thank
Showing
you.
your age. But it should be telling us what a brilliant job the council's been doing, keeping us odour free for 40 years.
Oh, it was the improvement that was made was fantastic.
So
it was fantastic, wasn't it?
So until we replace the trickling filters or put some alternative process in place, which will be a number of years, we won't get back to the levels of odour that we've had in the past. So it'll take years before we get everything to the way it has been recently. However, the very poor odours that people have been experiencing, we expect to at least start to reduce those over the coming weeks and to make a significant difference over the coming months.
Well, that's good news. I mean, the unfortunate thing is they're worse on those lovely, still warm days when we like to sit outside, but that's encouraging that it will reduce.
Yes, and they mostly affect people to the west of the plant, of course, because of the predominant easterly wind. Yeah. However, yes, on some very still days, and when you get a gentle offshore breeze rather than an onshore breeze, they are affecting people along the South Shore Spit. So yes, we are sharing it around a little bit as the winds shift, but doing everything that we can within those ponds to improve it.
It's really like you don't know what you got till it's gone scenario. Bring back the trickling filters. Yanni.
Thank you. Thanks for the detailed update. I just wanted to know how many complaints we've had and if we've seen any trend about where the complaints are coming from. Or
I haven't got that with me, so I'll have to come back to you on that one.
That would be helpful. I think, the next steps is really good, but I think getting some dates or timeframes or estimated timeframes would be helpful. How realistic is that? I know there's a lot.
It's probably a bit difficult yet, Yanni, because they haven't done the full investigation yet and the diagnosis. You mean timeframes for repair?
Well, I appreciate that the long term.
So there's two things. There's two things, Yanni. So we're sort of through the initial response period, and thankfully there's no more hotspots, and the damage investigation can now begin in earnest. However, the recovery plan for the interim operation of the plant, we've got a workshop on that to finalise that today. Okay. And I'll certainly get that to councillors once we've got that fully documented. And we'll have some timelines in there, particularly for getting the aerators, which will make the biggest difference.
In that final step, it would just be good to get a sense of the timeframes for each of those actions.
Yes, and we will definitely do our best to do that. So in terms of the aerators, we've got 3 that we've begged and borrowed for within New Zealand. We've got some possibilities offshore that we're exploring at the moment, and then we'll probably have to put some orders in for some equipment to come, and then we can get some idea of timelines for those. That will certainly, we'll try and get that recovery plan confirmed before Christmas.
Yeah, I think that would be really useful for the community. But I do want to acknowledge all the, the really hard work that you're putting in and the long hours that staff are focused on trying to solve the odour issue. Like from what you've told us and what we're seeing, even though it's an awful situation, it's not through lack of effort on trying to reduce it.
Thanks, Yanni. It's we can see it's a complex plant. So if you can send a memo out, Helen, with any data around the number of complaints so far, that would be good. And also we'll look forward to a time frame on those last action points.
Certainly.
Right, so if there's no more questions, we can move into your report in full.
Okay, so in the report as a whole, there's a few points of note. First of all, the ongoing work on water reform, and of course, Taumata Arawai has now taken over as the regulator, and we're really pleased that we've had a couple of meetings with the Taumata Arawai staff, both from the Christchurch office, because they will oversee our Banks Peninsula supplies, and also from the Wellington office, because they will have responsibility for the Christchurch metropolitan supply. So they've separated their work there.
And they've both given good feedback on Christchurch.
Good letter.
Yeah, they're very good people to work with. So yeah, we're pleased. It's been quite a seamless transition, and they've clearly been doing a lot of work in the background.
Don't have to chlorinate the existing non-chlorinated areas.
Yeah, so we're continuing to operate under our interim water safety plan, and we've got another meeting set up with the Taumata Arawai staff to confirm some of the technical details behind that.
Is that before Christmas? Or?
Yes.
Excellent.
Yep. The economic regulation has come out, and of course that's already been dealt with on your agenda. We've also been really busy on the stormwater management plans, and those are coming to council tomorrow, so there's a lot of work gone in there. And it's just worth noting there that the stormwater management plans are indeed narrow, as they were described by the zone committee, and that is because they are about consent compliance. So those stormwater management plans are about consent compliance under the comprehensive stormwater discharge consent, and they are relating to our networks. They're not about surface water generally, but wait, there's more. So the just as you've already seen the water supply implementation plan, and today the wastewater implementation plan, there is also a surface water implementation plan under the integrated water strategy, and that is where the broader work will be described and captured. So that's that'll be coming to you next year.
That's actually really helpful, Helen, because I was wondering how to respond to that that they pointed out in there.
Yes.
So it might be worth sending them out a memo to explain that.
Yes. Well, we will be engaging with the zone committees. So
Thank
yeah,
you.
yep, that'll be good. There's a report on drinking water compliance and follow-up actions, and then just noting with respect to the question from Councillor Turner, also that we're doing a thorough needs assessment across Banks Peninsula communities for water supply and wastewater, and that's being done under the Local Government Act. We've done the desktop survey work, and now we're doing some site visits out there. So that would be me, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Excellent. Right, we've got Jimmy, then Yanni.
Yes, okay, regarding on page 150, the Denton suction tank repair work. You mentioned underway. I just want to know when has been started this work, particularly inside those suction tank.
Yeah, so the roof's finished.
The roof's finished is three months ago already.
Yep, the roof's finished. Yeah, I don't think
inside
they haven't finished the work inside. So at the moment, but we're still using all the water from Denton. We've just got a bypass around the tank.
Yeah.
So all of the pump station's still operating, just with the wells going in directly into the network.
Yeah, but now it's getting warmer.
It is getting warmer.
You mentioned that warmer, they will start the work. So now it's summertime.
Yep.
Already summertime. Not yet. Still not yet.
We'll report it when it's finished.
Okay. Thank you.
Yanni?
Thank you for the update. I just had two questions. One was on page 147 under resource consents. It talks about a discharge of wastewater from constructed overflow locations during times of high rainfall, and there's discussion in there about ECAN, us going for a possible adjustment. I'm just kind of was quite keen to know a little bit more about that. Obviously, that would be something that, I would hope that we're doing more to reduce the impact of that.
Yes, we are. So we've actually done quite a thorough paper on this for the executive leadership team, because consent compliance, of course, is a very important thing to us. And I can turn that into a memo for you if you like. But a lot of this is about some of the way we demonstrate compliance with our consent is through the results of our modelling of the network. And the other way that we demonstrate it, of course, is through the reporting of actual overflows. Those two things don't quite equate. So the modelling of the network is a little conservative and predicting more overflows than we're actually seeing for the types of weather events that we're seeing. So we need to do a little bit of work in that space and work with Environment Canterbury to ensure that that we are complying and we are improving, and that we can get that modelling to be more accurate. But I can follow up with a more full memo if you like.
I think it would be useful. Are we progressively improving by reducing overflows?
Overall, yes.
Right.
Yes.
Good.
And the second question was in regards to the stormwater management plans, which are and I want to acknowledge there's been huge amounts of work that staff have done and very detailed and technical. But I was just interested why we're not having hearings into approving those, because we don't have a chance to hear directly from the submitters. And it just seemed to me they're quite significant, plans that we're adopting.
Now, I'd have to go back and have a look at why that process was done, but we certainly got legal advice on the process to follow, because the stormwater management plans are required under the consent.
And you have to notify them by the
20th?
I guess I would just be interested in the ones that are upcoming. Like, it's too late to do it for these ones, but whether it's a requirement that we don't have hearings, or whether if we wanted to have hearings, that's an option that we could to hear directly from people. But I was particularly taken by the zone committee talking about just the lack of joint up, planning around the whole stormwater, wastewater, the whole confusion that community have over trying to be engaged in a variety of processes.
Yes, and it's unfortunate that these first two come before we have that more overarching surface water implementation plan, which would show how everything joins up.
And that's where they're more suitable to be joining in with it in the surface water, not so much the piped stuff.
Well, to be honest, they're a lot more interesting, yes. And there's a lot more scope for community involvement, because that's where we get into the waterways enhancements work, for example.
Daylighting pipe stuff.
And the Y care groups and the school groups that adopt a portion of a waterway.
I know we could have got the awesome bees group to plant the sides, but anyway.
Yeah, but in terms of good governance, like having an ability to have a hearing on something that's significant, I think is, to me is good value. If
Could you, as far as a memo about why we?
I'll have to come back to you on that, yes, because I'm sorry I can't remember about why that decision was made. But
thank you.
Yeah, certainly.
Yep. Any other questions for the report? Oh, thanks, Sam. And you seconded, Aaron. Thanks, Helen. Is there any debate? I'll just say another excellent report, Helen. Thank you very much, and thank you for those two presentations that were extremely helpful.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, so I'll move that. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Good meeting. I'll now ask Makylie to close the meeting.
Una here te pō, whiri marama, te mokuia, te ao, whatu tangata. Tātai ki ronga, tātai ki raro, tātai ahoro. Haumie, huie, tai kie.
Kia ora.